It is almost 3 weeks since 3 men were shot dead by the police under questionable circumstances on the Georgetown seawall, and the coalition government is yet to pronounce on the matter. The 3 men shot dead were 46-year-old Dexroy Cordis, also known as Dutty of Grove, East Bank, Demerara, 37-year-old Kwame Asana of Buxton, and 57-year-old Errol Adams, also known as Dynamite of Dartmouth, Essequibo Coast, and Buxton, East Coast, Demerara. The police claimed that the men were in a black Toyota Ist, which trailed a customer from Scotiabank in Robb Street, Georgetown, who had just withdrew $9.2 million. It is alleged that the men opened fire on the police, who returned bullets, and the 3 ended up dead. Hughes has since produced a witness, Devon Light, who has debunked the police's version. But the lawyer pointed out that he is not at all surprised at the silence of the administration on the matter. He told reporters at a news conference on Monday that the killing of the men has nothing to do with whether he supported a coalition government in the past, and that citizens are entitled to the protection of the rule of law. According to Hughes, for him, it is really irrelevant who is in office.
I mean, the consequence of that argument is if the government in office happens to be one that you like, then you should turn a blind eye to what is an injustice.
If you're surprised with their silence, knowing that the government that's now in office as opposition, with you being part of that movement.
That was back then. But what I will say is that at the end of the day, governments tend to want to protect their state agents. So whenever they get into office, despite whatever their protestations are before they get into office, they then start to protect the people who are there to protect them in office and carry out the law. So I don't believe that the conduct of this government is any different from its predecessor. And not that I necessarily expected, I hope perhaps for different conduct, but I don't expect anything different. This is an execution. It doesn't matter who the president is or which party is in power. The citizen at the end of the day needs to be protected from this sort of arbitrary action by agents of the state.
Hughes, a former chairman of the Alliance for Change, has been a consistent advocate against extrajudicial killings and other human rights violations. He has since noted that the men were executed by the police. Meanwhile, when it was pointed out to Hughes that Dexroy Cordis was charged with simple larceny, he noted that despite a person's character or reputation, the police have no right to execute someone.
Assuming that this was a mass murder, walking down the seawall by himself, walking his dog, with all the awful convictions behind him, is the argument that the police are entitled to execute him because he is a mass murderer. Because if you allow us to drift to that stage, it means that when people who may not be possessed of that sort of reputation end up as the victims, then it's going to be justifiable. And that is the real issue here.
The lawyer made it clear that the rule of law must be adhered to.
Again, if you were following somebody and you had not presented a threat to anybody, I don't believe that that is the basis for the police to take you out when there's no threat. I think the reason why we have the rule of law is so that you pick people up who, if they are acting suspiciously or if they have committed a breach of the law, that you bring them to justice and that you don't leave it in the hands of somebody who's got a gun. That's why we have the state. That's why we have the rule of law. So I understand the enthusiasm of the Guyana Police Force wanting to spend a lot of time on the reputations of these gentlemen, but that is not the issue here. The point is the state is not entitled to execute people at random, whatever their reputation may be.
The family of Cordis has since retained the services of Hughes to pursue justice. His sisters appeared at the press conference where they noted that the story told by the police is one that is not true. Reporting for the newsroom, Fariza Hanif.